Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday. It's Friday the 13th, and I think can we do this both at once? Yes. Okay, I know you're all up here, and you really wanted to hear the opening music. There, it's come back to charge you up for the day. But we do have the soundboard set to simultaneous play, which can sometimes be a problem because sometimes you think you can cut off a previous sound effect by. It used to be the case, and you used to be able to cut off the music even if you were a couple seconds behind and put on the new one. But I kind of like this feature better. All right, well, it's Friday the 13th, and it's 2024. So that's also very horrible and dramatic. It's an election year, which is troublesome all by itself. September 13th, Friday the 13th, all the bad things are happening. And we have the bad luck to wake up to the growing suspicion that Laura Loomer is maybe too intimately involved in the affairs of Donald Trump for it to be somehow, I don't know. It's quite disturbing, of course, and it really should be, of course. We are reminded that we're not supposed to be dabbling in such rumors, et cetera, even if they're probably true, but whatever. And just simply say, isn't it enough that he values this person's advice? This person who is so horrible, racist, and openly white supremacist, et cetera, and yes, that would ordinarily be enough. But it's also the fact that he is a serial rapist, notorious sex pest, interested in very little else from women, generally speaking. And, of course, such a big advice taker he is. The notorious advice taker, Donald Trump. He likes to call people on the phone, his friends, and ask them, what they think about his certain actions, but mostly that's about what do you think about me as it relates to this situation. He's not really a super big advice taker, but yes, it is disturbing in its own right that he ends up taking her advice. But also, I guess people are now circulating photos of the two of them that. If you're trying to read the body language of it, I mean, you can't read his body language. He's just a giant orange blob, no matter what happens. But her body language, but notoriously unreliable is body language, and of course she can be totally infatuated with him, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But also the notorious non-reciprocator of affection, Donald Trump. Sure, and he rarely waits for any expression of affection anyway, by his own admission. So I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt if you want to. Take it with, brain bleach if you need to. It's a horrible situation. It warrants horror, dramatic music every time you think about it. And, it's just, it's bad news all around. Anyway, the other part of it, I guess, is that there's the oddity of her having accompanied him to the debate is one thing. That's just bad advice for getting ready for a debate. The oddity of her accompanying him in place of Melania, not only to the debate, but to the 9/11 memorials the day after, I think is what's part of fueling this speculation. And what can I tell you? It's irresponsible not to speculate, as we're told. Okay, so the speculation has happened. And we can move on from there. Plenty of things I needed to tell you about or wanted to share with you over this Friday the 13th. Can we call it? It should be a holiday of some kind, right? I mean, it's a holiday of bad luck, and you've had the bad luck of waking up to finding out that there might be something going on between Donald Trump and Laura Loomer. What could be more cursed than something like that? Okay, well, as it turns out, people are still writing about it. It is the subject of speculation, even at the serious publications like the Washington Post. If you consider that to be a serious publication. Trump's time with Loomer, a far-right activist, upsets his GOP allies. And it should, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is she's actually quite disturbing to be around or view in any way. I mean, sorry, but that's just true. And like with Donald Trump, there's just something repulsive about her visage. It's different, and that's all I have to say. But I think it has to do with knowing what comes out of her mouth and what she types and puts on social media more than anything else. Anyway, Loomer insisted this week that she does, quote, not work for Trump. I'm not certain how to read that. It's not that they enclosed in quote, does not work for Trump. He insisted this week that she does not work for Trump. That would be understandable, but not work, how am I supposed to read it? That you chose to put that in quotes. Like, what do you do for Trump? Well, it's not work, I'll tell you that. Or, what I'm doing is, not work. I don't know. I'm not certain what this is supposed to mean. It doesn't help me settle any of the rumors either. Loomer insisted this week that she does, quote, not work for Trump, but the campaign has declined to say why she has been part of the traveling entourage. And I mean, the fact that they declined to say doesn't mean anything by itself either, but you can take it for what it's worth. Patrick Svitek, S-V-I-T-E-K, sorry about that, that's the last name, what can I tell you, is responsible for this piece, and we'll hold you responsible for it, sir. Former President Donald Trump has traveled the country this week accompanied by far-right activist Laura Loomer, we know this, unnerving some GOP allies with his increasing embrace, of a provocateur with a history of espousing conspiracy theories and incendiary rhetoric. That's the way she's made herself famous. We understand that about Trump world. The history of statements by Ms. Loomer are beyond disturbing. The history is disturbing, sir. This is Senator Lindsey Graham garbling the syntax. This, he said in an interview on Thursday, I hope this problem gets resolved. I think we should be talking about things that people are concerned about, and this issue, I think, doesn't help the cause. I don't know if there was one particular issue. I mean, racism would certainly have been likely to have been it. I don't know what issue he thought he was addressing. Loomer most notably joined Trump as he made multiple stops Wednesday to mark the 23rd anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks, standing nearby as Trump and his running mate, that other person who's supposed to be with him, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, met with firefighters in New York City. Just last year, Loomer posted a video on Twitter that called the 9/11 assault on the United States an inside job. So yes, there was the incongruity, I guess, of attending 9/11 memorials while supposedly believing that it was an inside job. Maybe he's the sort of person who should be banned from attending 9/11 memorials. A few days later, Loomer launched a racist... because it's only now 1 or 2 days later. But a few days earlier, Loomer launched a racist attack. This must be what Graham's talking about. Against Trump's Democratic opponent in the November election, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is Indian American. If Harris wins, Loomer wrote, you heard this one yesterday, the White House, quote, will smell like curry, which smells great, by the way, and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center. Get it? Because India. In July, Loomer basically called Harris a, quote, drug-using prostitute. So, nice person. And maybe deserves whatever happens to her with Trump. In addition to joining Trump in New York, Loomer was seen getting off his plane the day before in Philadelphia prior to his debate with Harris there, and after she visited New York with Trump, Loomer headed with him to Shanksville, Pennsylvania for ceremonies commemorating 9/11. Loomer emphasized this week that she does, quote, not work for Trump. That is so odd. But the campaign has declined to say why she has been traveling with him amid increasing harsh scrutiny from Democrats and some Republicans. So far, the best explanation I've heard for it that doesn't involve lurid details. Well, I mean, unless you consider the details of what he said at the debate to be lurid details, and you might. But the best explanation so far is she's, a mimetic influencer of sorts, I guess. I don't even know if she produces. She writes what she thinks are one-liner, zinger, attack stuff, and she probably prepped him for the debate, and that manifested itself in him coming out and being nonsensical and blurting out the lines without any kind of setup, so that he's out there saying, and they're eating dogs and cats and illegal immigrants, transgender in prison. Trump repeatedly has pushed debunked claims and conspiracy theories, including peddling the lie that former President Barack Obama was not born in the United States, and amplified falsehoods from the deep recesses of the internet. Loomer regularly espouses conspiracy theories, including claims that both the 2018 school massacres in Parkland, Florida, and Santa Fe, Texas, were staged. Loomer, all of 31 years of age, has provided plenty of fodder for the Republican presidential nominee. Loomer said Thursday afternoon she stands by, quote, everything I have said, unquote. A former two-time congressional candidate, Loomer previously gained notoriety for her strident anti-Muslim rhetoric, once labeling herself a, quote, proud Islamophobe. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene to some of you, a Trump loyalist who has long feuded with Loomer, told reporters Thursday that Loomer's rhetoric and hateful tone are a huge problem for Republicans. The Congresswoman previously spoke out against Loomer last year when reports surfaced that Trump wanted to hire her for his campaign. He ultimately decided against it. Or did he? Loomer's rhetoric doesn't represent MAGA as a whole. I mean, it does represent MAGA as an HOLE, but, it doesn't represent who we are as Republicans, Greene said Thursday, adding that she does not think Loomer, quote, has the experience or the right mentality to advise a very important presidential election. And, no, she doesn't. Loomer, neither does she, but okay. Loomer on social media quickly lashed out at Graham and Greene, and not Graham Greene, though. He was left alone in all of this, after their comments criticized her presence in Trump's entourage. The Harris campaign did not respond to a request for comment on Loomer's association with Trump, but at the White House, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said no leader should ever associate with someone who spreads this kind of ugliness, this kind of racist poison. That's true. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries told reporters at a Capitol Hill news conference that Loomer's attendance at the 9/11 stops should shock the conscience of all decent Americans, and it does. It was shocking and irresponsible and offensive to the thousands of people who lost their lives on September 11th, including hundreds of brave first responders, members of the NYPD, FDNY, and others who raced toward the danger in order to help people escape the danger and lost their lives as a result of it. Jeffries said, adding that Trump is a conspiracy theory peddling racial arsonist, and pathological liar. Trump's campaign did not directly respond to questions about Loomer's latest involvement. I feel like we've said this 5 times already. Instead, seeking to emphasize the 9/11 anniversary. Let's see. Caroline Leavitt said for him, the day wasn't about anyone other than the souls who are no longer with us, their families. Yeah. So they gave standard 9/11 rhetoric, and you know what it might be. Graham said he has not gotten clarity on what role Loomer is playing in the campaign. He added that he was not previously aware of all her statements, and that some of this stuff is just cruel, citing Loomer's personal attacks on Claudia Conway, the daughter of former Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway. Okay. Loomer first gained national notoriety, get this, I didn't realize this was the case, as an undercover agent for Project Veritas, focusing her efforts on infiltrating Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And I guess that went nowhere, but neither did Project Veritas, as it turns out. She left the group in 2017. I like the way this is put. She left in 2017 to do stunts under her own name. That's right. Good, well put. Such as chaining herself to Twitter's New York headquarters and leading a group of undocumented immigrants to hop the fence at a Napa, California home owned by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Loomer ran for Congress in Florida twice, in 2020 and 2022, and lost both times. So what, she's 31 now? She would have been 27 and 29 during those bids? All right. Anyway, lost both times. Her anti-Muslim rhetoric, among other alleged terms of use violations, have led Facebook, Instagram, Lyft, and Uber, Venmo, PayPal, GoFundMe, and Cash App all to ban her. Well, Loomer claims that might not be true. Loomer fashioned herself as social media warrior for Trump during the 2024 Republican presidential primaries, crusading against one of his rivals, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. She repeatedly accused DeSantis and his wife, Casey DeSantis, of using her breast cancer diagnosis to generate sympathy from voters. Didn't work very well if that was the case. These days, Loomer identifies as an investigative journalist in service of Trump's reelection. I don't know what she was investigating on the plane this week, but not a super good investigative journal. I guess, well, she's not investigating him, so I guess it's okay. I'm investigating other people, and I'm telling you about it on an airplane. Anyway, I'm happy to dedicate all my time to helping Trump because no one else will hire me. Because if Trump doesn't get back in, I don't have anything, she told Washington Post last March, and that's probably true. She says she's been in talks to work for Trump's reelection campaign in the spring of 2023. She'd been in talks. Okay, I gotcha. The New York Times reported that Trump wanted to hire her. A backlash from Trump loyalists ensued, including a fierce rebuke from Green. No job ultimately materialized, an outcome for which Loomer holds Green responsible. All right, that's the origin of the beef, I guess. The lack of formal campaign employment, however, put little distance between Loomer and the former president. Trump invited Loomer to his private balcony at his Bedminster golf course last summer, and she has made several trips on Trump Force One with the former president, joining him and his campaign team on flights to rallies throughout the Republican primary. At a rally in Iowa last January, Trump told the gathered crowd that Loomer was a, quote, very important person politically. In March, he called her out as a, quote, woman with courage at a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago. The great Laura Loomer. Some of you know Laura. She's a fantastic person, great woman, Trump said during the July speech in Nashville. Trump routinely reposts Loomer's content to his Truth Social account. She supplied the first post the former president ever made questioning Harris's racial identity. That comes from her? Okay. A graphic that compared a headline from Harris's historic U.S. Senate win in 2016, which noted her as the first Indian-American U.S. Senator, and one from 2020, which noted she was the, quote, first black woman to be selected as a presidential running mate. A friend had made the graphic for her. Loomer thinks she was, quote, probably, unquote, the first person to bring Harris's racial identity to Trump's attention. Later that week, he raised the issue at the National Association of Black Journalists conference in Chicago. That did not go well. She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage, Trump said in July. I did not know that she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. What a jackass. And Loomer's responsible. Loomer has also amplified the baseless conspiracy theory that Haitian immigrants in an Ohio town are abducting and eating pets, a claim that Trump echoed, sort of, in his Tuesday debate against Harris. Loomer's recent attack on Harris over her Indian heritage comes at a time when Harris is not the only Indian American playing a prominent role in the presidential race. Vance's wife, does anybody remember this? Did you forget? Vance's wife, lawyer Usha Vance, is the daughter of Indian immigrants. A Vance spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the Loomer post, saying the White House would smell like curry if Harris wins. Green responded Wednesday on Twitter, calling Loomer's post appalling and extremely racist. The Congresswoman told reporters Thursday that she usually tries to ignore Loomer's posts, but the attack on Harris as an Indian American bothered me so much. There must be a fairly significant Indian American population in her corner of Georgia. Graham called the attack abhorrent. He said he spoke Thursday morning with Green about the matter, oh God, and that she is, quote, very concerned about the political impact this will have in Georgia, a battleground state that is home to one of the largest Indian American populations in the country. I figured that must be the case, because otherwise, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not going to care one way or the other about it. Well, anyway, you should see the exchanges that are going back and forth between these two. I mean, you really shouldn't. It will really actually probably upset you a great deal. Just because of the things that have... Look, Laura Loomer is completely insane for a number of reasons. And, she says things... I can't care all that much. Like I said, I don't care which leopard eats which face in that fight. And really, I guess I hope for both. But, wow... You should see it. I don't know if I even have it handy anymore. I'm pretty sure I retweeted somebody else's a social media post about, or that they had captured some of Loomer's midnight ravings about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and yeah. What can I tell you? They're as crazy as could possibly be. They're as vicious and personal as could possibly be. I'm just not terribly concerned about Marjorie Taylor Greene being insulted. So it's kind of fun. It's popcorn worthy, I guess you could say, and people are enjoying watching the fight. I'll see whether any of these breaks give us an opportunity to bring any of them to the fore. And I think maybe the thing to do would just be to share them with you in the roundup rather than actually read them on the air, because holy mackerel. All right, so let's see. A little bit of an update or more information about what's going on in North Carolina, which Greg mentioned yesterday, I think, with respect to RFK Jr. trying to get himself taken off of the ballot. And I think I understood the situation backward in some way. But here, an update from somebody who definitely has it straightened out here. Mark Joseph Stern at Slate writes about what's going on there. It may be that Greg gave me the straight explanation and I came away with it upside down and backwards. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has, under the headline here in Slate, has sabotaged early voting in a critical swing state. That's the real import of this North Carolina situation. Check this out. The North Carolina Supreme Court tossed a grenade into the state's election on Monday, violating both state and federal law, to grant Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s cynical last-minute removal from the ballot. Its 4-3 decision will compel election administrators to destroy nearly 3 million already printed ballots that feature Kennedy's name and redesign 2,348 different ballot styles across the state to accommodate the 11th hour change. And the more I think about it, the more Greg, absolutely made this clear. But I don't know. Somehow I came away with the idea that they did the opposite, that they didn't. That's a different state, I think. And in Michigan, they wouldn't let him remove his name from the ballot. That's what I was thinking of, I think. This complex process will significantly delay the distribution of new ballots, which will in turn unlawfully abridge early voting for everyone while jeopardizing the voting rights of service members overseas, in clear contradiction of federal statute. It's a nightmare for local election officials who must now disregard the laws they're sworn to uphold. And it's an affront to North Carolinians at large, whose right to a fair, orderly election has been sabotaged by a lawless court and the candidate it so obviously favors. It is a very interesting thing that he's doing here. Yesterday, what struck me about it was, now courts are finding, those deadlines aren't really all that hard and fast after all. Although, as it turns out, they've already printed these ballots, so they're definitely going to have to, that's the sort of thing that ordinarily, if somehow the shoe were on the other foot, the court would be saying, oh no, sorry, we can't help you. The ballots have already been printed. We can't just destroy all these ballots and start over. We won't be able to have the election held as planned. So this is actually quite interesting. Not only does it suppress early voting, as Stern points out, but it will become surely the grounds for pretty much any challenge that Republicans decide to launch to whatever the results are in North Carolina. Win or lose, in 2020, they challenged a lot of Trump wins just for the hell of it. I don't know whether they thought that made them look fair and balanced or whatever. But yes, now they can say, oh, well, they didn't let the overseas military vote. I refuse to certify these results. It really does begin to look like that's what's getting set up here. Kennedy versus North Carolina State Board of Elections, Monday's decision is exactly what you'd expect from a court controlled by elected Republican justices. The facts are damning. After running for months as a third-party candidate, RFK Jr., quote, suspended his campaign and endorsed Trump on August 23rd. Kennedy then sought to selectively remove his name from the ballot, but only in swing states where it might help Trump. By the time Kennedy dropped out, the North Carolina State Board of Elections had informed candidates and parties that the deadline for replacing nominees would be August 22nd. Kennedy did not file his request for removal until August 27th, 5 days after the deadline and 4 days after he actually withdrew. So, what were you waiting for, right? I mean, I think that's a fair criticism as well. By that point, the election boards in the counties were already printing their ballots, and under state law, the Board of Elections may refuse a, quote, late request to remove a candidate from the ballot when removal is no longer practical. Another state law compels election officials to mail ballots to service members and others living overseas by September 6th. North Carolina's state elections director testified that redesigning the ballot would take 18 to 23 days. Holy cow. So removing Kennedy's name from the ballot, then designing and printing substitutes would require election officials to violate state law. Hey, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Coast, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Woo! All right, let's see. We left off in the middle of Mark Joseph Stern's article in Slate about what happened in the courts in North Carolina, and he makes the point, which I guess we should reemphasize since we were saying, this is probably going to be used as a setup for Republican elections officials in North Carolina to refuse to certify the results of the North Carolina election. Probably almost no matter what the results are. Even if Trump were to win or to appear to have won in North Carolina, they could still do it. And who knows whether that will be to their advantage at the time. We can't know that just yet, but the opportunity is there. How so? Again, with this late request to remove RFK Jr.'s name from the ballot coming after the deadline and then requiring reprinting of all these ballots, they're definitely going to miss the deadline for mailing ballots to service members and others living overseas. That's required by September 6th. It is now September 13th. They just found out on Monday that they would have to do this, and they were already past that deadline anyway. And so now he states it quite plainly. In order to do this, in order to comply with the order of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, they will have to violate state law. So they're certainly between a rock and a hard place here. Do we defy state law, or do we defy the people who say they are state law, the North Carolina Supreme Court? Even if these officials, Stern notes, had begun removing Kennedy's name the moment he suspended his campaign, they couldn't have met the legal deadline. It was just impossible, right? Yet the North Carolina Supreme Court still sided with Kennedy, and there's really no good reason for that. A bare majority ordered elections officials to work around the clock to destroy 3 million ballots, redesign new ones for every locality, mail them out as quickly as possible. And mail them out, but okay, you understood that to be the case. The work and the cost of this undertaking falls primarily on badly underfunded county boards of elections. Monday's decision also forces the board to shorten the early voting period, which was required by law to begin on September 6th, along with the mailing of those ballots, right? And the ruling may also push the state into a violation of federal law, which orders states to send absentee ballots overseas by September 21st. So that's a week from tomorrow. North Carolina election officials have warned the court that removing Kennedy may make it impossible to mail ballots by that date. It's no exaggeration to say that the state Supreme Court is nullifying federal voting rights. Why? Republican Justice Trey Allen's opinion for the court accused the Board of Elections of misconduct somehow, suggesting that it rushed to print ballots featuring RFK Jr. so that they could not remove his name in time. Well, this baseless accusation rests on the fact that the board did not stop printing ballots the moment that Kennedy announced his withdrawal, even though he did not say whether he'd withdraw from North Carolina in that speech, and did not file for removal in the state for 5 more days. Allen smeared election officials as lacking clean hands, maligning them for the crime of following the law as written. In search of legal justification, Allen cited the North Carolina Constitution's guarantee that, quote, all elections shall be free. I mean, that doesn't say very much, but okay. All elections shall be free. It's a nice concept. Keeping Kennedy on the ballot after his withdrawal, the justice wrote, would infringe upon this fundamental and exclusive right by denying them accurate information regarding the candidates. Them being the voters, I guess. What's most preposterous about this logic is that Allen and his conservative colleagues have gutted this very right at every opportunity. As soon as conservative justices flipped the court in 2023, they overturned precedents protecting citizens' ability to participate in free elections. Most notoriously, they reversed several landmark rulings that limited partisan redistricting, giving the GOP-dominated legislature carte blanche to gerrymander Democrats into a permanent minority. In the process, these justices dismissed the guarantee of free elections as little more than an aspirational statement of principle. Now, in an about-face, the conservative justices have turbocharged the free elections clause, but only to reward RFK Jr.'s gamesmanship on Trump's behalf. Evidently, this clause is so meaningless that it does not limit the legislature's authority to punish citizens for voting Democratic by denying them fair representation. And at the same time, it is somehow so powerful that it compels courts to throw elections into chaos and uncertainty in violation of state and federal law to benefit a candidate who broke the rules. I would assume Stern will get around to it at some point, but if not, again, just to reiterate my point, this now means that when Republican elections officials refuse to certify the results of North Carolina's vote, they will be able to say, I'm doing it because North Carolina elections procedures violated both state and federal election law, and they will be right. Sort of. But for the fact that the violations were forced on them by the North Carolina Supreme Court. At which point they'll probably say, no, we didn't. You brought it on yourself somehow. So what happens next? The Elections Board is desperately racing to design and print ballots to meet the federal deadline, but it might not succeed. Voters, both stateside and abroad, face a denial of their right secured by state and federal statute to vote early. The whims of one man, as Justice Allison Riggs warned in dissent, have been elevated above the constitutional interests of tens of thousands of North Carolina voters. Well, his last name is Kennedy, so I guess it's okay. Indeed, Monday's decision substantially shortens the early voting period for all North Carolinians, or Carolinians, depending on the pronunciation, and threatens the ability of service members stationed overseas to receive and return their ballot in time for the election. Voters who requested an absentee ballot were by law entitled to get them mailed out by September 6th, and now these ballots cannot be mailed out for weeks. The ruling was so destabilizing that even Justice Richard Dietz, D-I-E-T-Z, maybe, a conservative, felt moved to dissent, faulting the majority for failing to follow the law as it is written. Originalism. It was Riggs, though, joined by the court's one other liberal, Justice Anita Earls, who laid bare the shameless partisan hackery on display. Today, any public aspersions cast on the impartiality, independence, and dignity of our state courts are well earned, she wrote in her dissent, decrying the magnitude of the harm inflicted as egregious and unjustified. It's telling that Riggs took the unusual step of inviting the public to condemn not just the majority's decision, but its integrity as a judicial body. North Carolina's justices are elected, and Riggs is running in November's ballot, and doesn't want her name removed, for an 8-year term against Republican Jefferson Griffin. Sounds like a great guy. I don't know anything about him, but I'd wonder. Do your research, I guess. Over the past 4 years, Republicans flipped 4 seats on the court, consigning Democrats to a 5-2 minority. If Griffin unseats Riggs, then Earls will be the last remaining liberal. It would take decades to shift the court anywhere near the center, let alone flip it to the left. All the while, a far-right supermajority would run roughshod over North Carolinians' rights and continually interfere in elections to benefit Republicans. They're doing it right in front of you now. That, of course, is what's going on here. North Carolina is hugely competitive. Polls indicate that Trump and Kamala Harris are effectively tied. Harris's first 2 rallies after Tuesday's debate will be held in the state. I guess they already were. A sign of its extraordinary importance. As a candidate, RFK Jr. appeared to siphon more votes from Trump than from his Democratic opponent. He's removing himself from the ballot in swing states because he fears his supporters will vote for him if his name appears. That's an odd fear to have. And vote for Trump if it does not. And because he waited until the last minute, early voters who skew Democratic in the state will be denied their ballots on time. Now, North Carolina Supreme Court is breaking the law to abet Kennedy's efforts on Trump's behalf. If the state's voters are sick of political chaos infecting their judiciary, Riggs's election gives them an opportunity to fight back. If elections officials can still get their ballots out in time, that is. So, all right, we need to redouble our efforts to remind people that even though the ballots are being delayed, you need to go and get one ASAP, file it away, return it, get it back in there. Get it back in official hands where it can be counted, and Republicans can refuse to certify it later, and then we can, tar and feather them afterwards. If it was good enough for the founders. I'm an originalist when it comes to tarring and feathering people who stand in the way of your right to vote. Okay. So, that was exciting and fun. Good to have on hand. Needed to be put on the record. There's more, of course, socked away in pocket. And also a couple of items that have come in via the various communications channels, email, etc. Let's see. I don't even know what to tell you. There's so many things that have to be added to the record. Let me see if I can access this still. Can I? I guess not. But it was an important. It's too bad because I really don't understand how the Atlantic does this work, but their paywall is interesting, and I'm not a subscriber, and I know that Greg is, and I don't know. The record of the Atlantic is mixed enough that I have so far withheld my subscription, and even though the record of the New York Times is not mixed, they're far more essential, I think, to the daily news flow for the show. So All right, well, you can attack me for that. But Adam Serwer, of course, one of the good reasons to subscribe to The Atlantic, there are many, but there are also some others that are good reasons not to, who wrote a piece, Gullible Mr. Trump, the former president will believe anything, even wild rumors about immigrants killing and eating pets, as long as it's cruel, because cruelty is the point, that's Adam for you, politically expedient, of course, and on TV. And that's actually one of the most important points in understanding this guy, Donald Trump. Mindset, still stuck in the 80s, still very much a linear TV kind of guy. But whatever you put on a screen, he'll believe, even if it's the Gorilla Channel, well, even if that's not real. Who cares? I mean, put it on a screen and he believes it. Now, the Atlantic's paywall is such that although this came by way of social media with the whole tag that identifies it as a gift article, it is a gift that they take away after one viewing. Apparently, I saw it on Blue Sky and I clicked on it on my phone and skimmed the article and said, wow, this would be really good. Oh, look, it's a gift article. I'll put it in Pocket. But as soon as you put it in Pocket, like, this has been read. So no, you're not allowed to look at it anymore. But basically, the idea of this thing is, one, not only is Donald Trump susceptible to just repeating in a speech, in a debate, or policy pronouncement, the words of the last person who speaks to him before he opens his mouth. And in this case, it was Laura Loomer, which was super bad news. But also that, like a child, but a child of the 80s, he essentially, his defense of having repeated the blood libel lie about the Haitian American community in Springfield is that he saw it on TV. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Is this in here, this quote before the things fade out? I guess so. The setup that Adam gives here, and it's always worth reading Adam's words on anything, I think. Perhaps the most telling moment of the debate was when former President Donald Trump, desperate for a compelling attack line against Harris, repeated the right-wing canard that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio are stealing and eating people's pets. They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. Trump shouted into the microphone. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. The moderator, ABC News' David Muir, quickly noted that the city manager has said the story is baseless. Now, it's not just the city manager. It's also the police there. No one's filed any police reports about this alleged heinous crime. And so now, of course, by the way, just for fun, we'll note along the way that now Republicans hate cops again because there's no police reports. Why are the police lying on behalf of these Haitian immigrants? Well, they're not. Anyway, a diminished Trump replied, and this is really the key point here. Well, I've seen people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. This was a tremendously revealing response about how Trump's brain, such as it is, works. And by extension, the minds of his Fox News captured supporters who will simply believe anything they are told, no matter how outrageous or false, as long as it aligns with their pre-existing prejudices. And perhaps more to the point, I mean, for Donald Trump, as long as it's presented on television, he just believes things. Even when he's tuned into a known propaganda channel, he just sort of, he's stuck in that mindset. He's exactly the perfect target for this stuff. The original fake news, taking a right-wing propaganda network and filling it with content designed to look like news. We'll put this payola-taking wackadoodle in a suit and comb his hair, sit him at a desk, and project pictures over his shoulder and tell him to speak in a low voice with a tone of gravitas and maybe a little bit of outrage because people like that in our audience. And therefore it's news. No, it's just a paid actor screaming about nonsense, but doing so on what looks like a news set. But that works for these guys. So there you go. where did we leave off with this? Okay. Trump felt so wounded by the exchange that he went on Fox News the next day to demand that ABC News be shut down for fact-checking him. A reminder that Trump does not believe that Americans should have the legal right to criticize him. And that's where the free preview of the article leaves off. I'll see if we can't get another copy of it. Maybe it will work for you if I give you the gift link, since you haven't opened it, presumably. Although, maybe you have, because it's always worth opening an Adam Serwer article. But at any rate, he makes the point that I wanted to take away from this thing, is that the television is so important for Donald Trump. If he sees it on TV, he believes it, just as he did. He's claimed, although one of the problems with Donald Trump is sometimes he just lies. Well, that's a huge problem. And sometimes I think he hallucinates what he sees on TV, or misunderstands, or embellishes, which is to say lies about what he saw. Because you and I don't know. Most people, I think, and probably you dug into at some level, where the F and F did this thing come from? And, by the way, the answer is not Dan Balls. So,
Dan Balls.
No, it's not Dan Balls, Greg. So you just stop it with that. But that's
bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Greg. Anyway, at least he admits it. The point is that Trump will sometimes embellish or hallucinate this stuff, as he did. I saw it on television that people in Jersey City, the Arabs, they were dancing on the rooftops during 9/11. I saw it on TV. And he didn't see it on TV because it wasn't on TV anywhere. But he imagined that they were probably dancing, and he was also watching TV. And so therefore, now you have a story. I saw it on TV. People on television say my dog was taken and used for food. That's not what happened. Now, the origin of this thing, if you looked into it, and I didn't look into it. It just presented itself to me in social media. But apparently this originates with, it's the worst possible origin story, just in terms of the value of the evidence and the proof that it provides. As you know, there being a difference. It is a third, fourth hand Facebook post where somebody literally said, I don't know, have it in front of me, but it's basically my, sister's cousin's next door neighbor's aunt told me that her daughter definitely saw, this sort of thing. And people were making fun of it by, retweeting the scene at Ferris Bueller, right? My sister's cousins saw Ferris at 31 Flavors last night, right? That whole thing. Because it resembles that more than anything else. And it really was a third, fourth, fifth hand account of a person saying that they heard of somebody whose cat went missing. And nobody's cat ever goes missing. That never happens without Haitian immigrants stealing them, right? And that they went looking for them, and they saw, it is said, in this stupid post, they saw that the Haitian American family, I'm sure they didn't call them American, but the Haitian family down the street, next door, I don't know, that this person observed in their yard that they had the cat hanging from a tree like they were field dressing it like a deer that had been harvested, as they say, or hunted, and shot and killed, as the deers would put it, and murdered. But how this, comes to be the case, I have no idea. But they're carving it up, she says, like for meat, which, I don't know. Do you want to spend any time debunking this? One, I guess you would say, if you're field dressing a cat for meat, how do you know that that's your cat? My cat is gray with white stripes. Yeah, well, that cat has no fur because it's being field dressed. Two, well, maybe they happened long before they skinned the cat. As you know, there are several ways to accomplish this task, and some of them might be more time consuming than others, and you might be able to observe the fur color that way. But hanging from a tree for field dressing, that is something you would do for a deer or large animal because it facilitates the job. But a cat can be skinned on a tabletop, There's no need to hang it from a tree. It's very unlikely that they did do that. But we don't know about the methodology of these things. It's an unusual occurrence. Maybe they were hanging it from a tree. Maybe they got there before the skinning had happened. But at any rate, although how they were carving it up for meat and how you could be sure of that, one of those two things has to not be true. Or else this person arrived, saw that it was their cat, and said, I think I'll just sit here and take a look and watch to see whether or not they skin this thing that's hanging up here. It is my cat, but I want to see exactly what's going to happen to it. It's just nonsense. I've got a message here from production staff in the background, this time the mom side of the production staff, who says it's in the article, but you're sending me the article that is paywalled that I was trying to read, I think. But maybe do you have a gift link for it and maybe it'll open it up? No, it won't. Okay. I already have that article open. That's the problem. I don't subscribe to The Atlantic, so I can't read it. But apparently, I guess that description of what's going on, the background of it, and where it comes from is in the article. So if you're able to read it, you'll be able to see it yourself. But basically, it sounds like a pack of lies. At least one version of it has to be a pack of lies. There could be some kernel of truth in it somewhere. The person then goes on, by the way, to say that they're also stealing the local ducks and geese from the park and eating them. Well, that's entirely possible. People eat duck and geese. People eat cats and dogs too, I guess, in some places. But that's supposed to be taboo. Eating ducks and geese, well, everybody does that. I mean, I don't know that anybody goes to the local park and gets them. But, I mean, you can't get more wholesome, pure, and European than a nice fat Christmas goose. They're right in the Christmas Carol. They're eating goose. And yet that's supposed to be super weird. And that, of course, was bolstered by somebody found a picture of a black guy carrying a goose somewhere without any information about who it was, where they were. There was some information about where it was. It was not in Springfield, for one thing. But certainly no information about whether or not the person involved was Haitian or whether they were even eating that goose. But anyway, you get the idea. It's all circumstantial evidence, and worse than that, it is fourth, fifth, sixth hand circumstantial evidence. And this the original reporting person here, who definitely saw their cat hanging upside down and said nothing, also heard from park rangers. For the rangers told me that they were stealing the geese and the ducks. And of course, you've all been to the local parks to feed the geese and ducks with your stale bread and encountered your friendly local park ranger. They don't have those. That was just not part of the truth. And so anyway, it's just very telling, as Adam points out, that he says, I saw it on television. It wasn't a television story, right? But I saw it on television. I imagined I saw it on television. Or I saw people on the television that I watch say that they heard from somebody somewhere, that somebody posted on Facebook that they fifth hand saw their cat hanging upside down and didn't say anything. And also then the park ranger from Jellystone National Park showed up to show them that there are ducks and geese in Haitian people's picnic baskets. And there you have it. That's fact. Well, I saw it on television. No, you didn't. It wasn't a TV story. My dog was taken and used for food. It was a cat. And we don't know how it was used. But this is how he puts things together. And part of that might be because Laura Loomer is on the plane with him to the debate, telling him what's hot and trending on the right-wing social media sites and Nazi hangouts. And he said, oh, okay, great. And then when he blanked out on where he heard it or didn't want to say, well, Laura Loomer told me on the plane on the way here that people are eating dogs and cats. So he said, I know what I'll say that makes it sound authoritative. I saw it on television, which, as Greg reminds us, is increasingly irrelevant to a larger and growing part of the country. People under 40 will tell you, for the most part these days, saw it on television. You know, that's not relevant to me. People under 20, people under 25, ask my kids about it. Saw it on television. Like, what is that? A thing? What do you mean, saw it on television? somebody put it on top of the thing there that gathers dust. My parents watch television. I watch streaming video. But okay. Not me. My kids will say that to you. It's true. They don't watch any television. Well, there's a similar story behind the other rumor that Trump elevated by blurting it out on the debate stage. The goings-on, or rather the non-goings-on, in Aurora, Colorado, where the right wing is aflame with rumors that Venezuelan gangs have taken over the entire town, or if you have it, if you're like really specific about it, there are apartment buildings, entire apartment complexes that they have taken over, or if you're on the other side of the spectrum, they've burned down Aurora, Colorado. It doesn't exist anymore, just the same way Minneapolis, Minnesota was burned to the ground. There really are people who apparently believe this. I do see from time to time people on social media saying, my relatives are positive that Minneapolis was completely destroyed. And, there's no amount that you can't show them a picture of downtown Minneapolis because they'll just say it's AI or it's an old picture or something like that. I have a hard time believing that there are such people just because I avoid them, generally speaking. But clearly, I don't know, people say it because New York Times reporters love going to diners where people say they believe stuff like this. And I still believe that the New York Times reporters, as, foolish as they are hearing people say that they believe this and are faithfully reporting that people have said this to them. I don't think they make that part up. Well, anyway, there's some background stories that I'll share with you after this next break that help explain. I always love going looking for, I love repeating when I see it made available to me, the grain of truth, and trying to imagine the game of telephone that happens inside these empty orange heads, and MAGA hat-topped orange heads at that, that produces the lurid stories that they share with one another that get blurted out by Trump in, 30-second sound bites. By the time it reaches Trump, well, it sounds like she's in favor of transgender operations for immigrants in prison. Now, there's a grain of truth in there. What is it? Well, gender-affirming care and not denying it to people who happen to be prisoners. Okay, but that's not what you said. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. As I used I only had 1 minute this time, but I want to use the break to try and find a gift link, perhaps, if it was available to Adam's post, because it is his usual habit when he discusses things. He knows about the paywall and will very often include a gift link. Let's see if it will work. I mean, the thing about The Atlantic also is even when the gift link works, they put this gigantic pop-up in the way that says, this is a gift article, subscribe now. And they give you 2 lines at a time that you can read. But I can scroll. We'll see whether, this might become choppy reading it at this pace, but it does sort of kind of work. It's a little chintzy on behalf of The Atlantic here, but look, people got to get paid for their work. Even though I say that, even though I don't pay them, but I believe that they should get paid for their work, and I would pay them a lot more for their work if I was getting paid for my work, but I'm not sure who to ask. We do it by donations here. Oh, and boy, but that reminds me, I have something to catch up on. But okay, let's get to the substance here for just a second, if I may. I gave you the gist of it, and we really should move on to the story out of Aurora, Colorado. But again, that would mean passing on Adam Serwer, and that's just unwise, generally speaking. So, as where we left off was, of course, this was all a reminder that when he went on to Fox News the next day and said, ABC News, I didn't even see this, but ABC News should be shut down. Why? Because they fact-checked him, which is a reminder that Trump does not believe that Americans should have the legal right to criticize him. And, of course, dictators on day one tend to stay dictators, by the way. And they actually do go right ahead and make it illegal to criticize them. Now, this falsehood, the one about arising out of Springfield, Ohio, we'll say it that way, This falsehood, directed at a community that has done nothing wrong besides being from a different place than the surrounding residents, shows how much the Trump campaign strategy hinges on polluting the information environment with lies about vulnerable groups that Republicans want to blame for the country's problems. But for all their dishonest catastrophizing about immigrants, Republicans offer no solutions, only boundless cruelty towards scapegoats. Fact-checked in real time, Trump could provide no evidence for his smear, because there isn't any, other than that, like a small child, he believes everything he sees on TV. And there's something so super pathetic about having the word, the big, long, clunky word, the way he pronounces it, fall out of his mouth. How come you think this is true? I saw it on television. It's incredible. You can't believe there's anybody that would say that and be serious about thinking that someone would say, oh, television, why didn't you say so, right? Much of the Republican political strategy is based on pumping this kind of poison into the public discourse. It is idiotic nonsense that, as Trump has said, children are going to school and coming home having received gender reassignment surgery. It is totally false that undocumented immigrants are swinging elections. It is a vicious fabrication that women are having their babies killed right after being born. Like the Trump campaign's effort to incite hatred against Haitian immigrants, these are nothing more than lies meant to frighten the intended audience into endorsing extreme measures against constituencies that are too small or politically weak to defend themselves. I don't want to overstate the degree to which the media have acted as a bulwark against these falsehoods. Many members of the press have not covered themselves in glory, perhaps fearing that correcting Trump too aggressively would make them look biased in favor of Democrats. But misinformation has thrived mostly because social media platforms have largely abandoned efforts at moderation. Why? After a successful intimidation campaign by conservatives committed to ensuring that their most baseless propaganda can reach as large an audience as possible, right? Anybody who stood in the way of that and said, we're going to label misinformation on our social media network was immediately attacked as being opposed to free speech in some way. Members of the press may fail at delivering the truth, but they will at least attempt to do so. Social media platforms have no such commitment to providing accurate information to users. Their priority is ensuring that you are glued to your devices for as long as possible. The extent to which this toxic information dynamic is due solely to the Republican interest in defending whatever baffling nonsense comes out of Trump's mouth is probably understated. In this environment, and especially on Elon Musk's Twitter, now called X, of course, where the right-wing billionaire has used his account to boost one false claim after another, misinformation can thrive largely unopposed. This is why Russian influence operations have been so successful in paying conservatives to do their bidding. It is why Republicans in Congress used their authority to attack disinformation researchers. Don't forget that happened, right? People who actually point out what's going on here and how a kernel of truth gets warped into these nonsense attacks, they've been under attack by members of Congress. We got to investigate the universities that are funding so-called disinformation research because they keep calling us out as liars. So let's put a stop to it. It is why conservatives are paying online influencers to spread misogynist lies about Harris. I don't even know if I know specifically which one that one is, but it's linked, so I'm going to open it up in case we need it later. It is also why the lie about Haitian immigrants spread so quickly, despite having no basis in fact. Trump had no evidence for this lie, which is his running mate, J.D. Vance, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, by the way, smearing his own constituents. And I know people say to me, as they did on social media, he doesn't consider Haitian Americans to be his constituents. I remind you of what happened yesterday, which, I don't know, did it happen after the show? I spent most of the day talking about it on social media, but you will by now likely have heard that all over Springfield, Ohio yesterday, the big news was the massive amounts of time and effort and resources diverted towards evacuating the city hall there, evacuating the elementary school there, Fulton Elementary School in Springfield, Missouri, evacuated due to a bomb threat. Both of them apparently phoned in by people who said in the course of leveling their threats that this was being done because of all the terrible things that they had heard that Haitian immigrants were doing in Springfield, Ohio. So what happened? J.D. Vance gave out the information necessary to prompt local wackadoodles, or possibly wackadoodles from somewhere else in the country, to swat the elementary school in Springfield, one of several, such that if you thought your kids were in school, Springfield, yesterday at 9 a.m., no. Let me tell you where the elementary school kids were. They were at their family reunification locations that they use in their active shooter drills because they had been driven from the safety of their school by bomb threats leveled by weirdos who believed Trump about the Haitian pet eating stuff. And now those kids are crying and in a hiding spot somewhere waiting for their parents to pick them up. You thought they were in school learning their ABCs. They were, in fact, waiting to be picked up, afraid that they were going to be blown to bits by the guy who swatted their school at J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's direction. I know that J.D. Vance doesn't care about his Haitian American constituents, but I think there were some white kids in that school too. And they went through their whole active shooter rigmarole to try to escape the threats that were coming from J.D. Vance supporters. Thanks a lot. I don't think anybody has ever, as a sitting senator, swatted schools in their own constituency this way. But thanks, Vance, for being among the first. So where were we? Right. Trump had no evidence for his lie, which his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, has repeated despite tacit acknowledgement of its inaccuracy, posting, as he did, that it, quote, is possible these rumors will turn out to be false. Well, you know, many people are saying that J.D. Vance made those bomb threat calls himself. But of course, it could turn out that those rumors will turn out to be false. So, no offense, or with all due respect, J.D. Vance was the actual terrorist who did it. But, you know, unless that turns out to be false. I'm covered. In J.D. Vance's mind, anyway. Vance's response deserves unpacking. About 15,000 Haitian immigrants have moved to Springfield, helping revitalize the local economy, by the way, and filling the pews of local churches, which is supposed to be a good thing, right? There have also been problems. A sudden influx of people is likely to temporarily strain infrastructure that was built for a smaller population. And the thing they love to hang their hat on, the haters in the area, a child was killed last year when a Haitian immigrant crashed into a school bus. The family of the child, by the way, has said that the Haitian community as a whole is not at fault, obviously, because, of course not, one person did this. And I mean, there are such things as traffic accidents. There's such things as gun accidents that they swear to God have nothing to do with the guns involved or the people, for that matter. And everything is A-okay and stop bothering gun owners. But let me, I'm going to drive all the Haitians out of this community because one Haitian person had a car accident. But as was pointed out, the family of the child has said that the Haitian community as a whole is not at fault, and he has told the Trump campaign to stop exploiting their son's death in a xenophobic campaign against immigrants. That's in pocket for you if you want that one. Besides, the Haitian community is not collectively responsible for the actions of one of its members any more than white people in Ohio are responsible for Vance. Although, I guess they kind of are. The Haitian immigrants in Springfield have been doing precisely what conservatives say they want immigrants to do. Come legally, work hard, and contribute to their new home. But they did leave out the part about don't be black or brown. That's what they really want. But precisely because these immigrants were doing what they were asked, it was therefore necessary to lie about them. How are you going to get people to hate brown and black people if you don't have something nasty to say about them? They come here illegally. No, they don't. All right. Well, I won't lie. That's amazing, right? I can't lie about that. Sure you can. Go ahead. They aren't stealing, they're not, they are assimilating, they are going to school, they're going to church, all the things that they say they, supposed to do. Work hard, contribute to their new home. They're not doing those things. All right. Well, I could always lie about them, why they don't lie, and just say, well, they are illegal and they don't work hard, they don't contribute to their new home. I don't know. But it's much more effective, I guess, at sparking outrage if you come up with something crazy about them. As Vance's response indicates, it does not matter to him if the scurrilous accusations he was making are true. He does not care. If immigration is bad and immigrants are bad, then even a lie serves a larger truth. Those smears of Haitian immigrants are dishonorable. They are cowardly, they're dishonest, and in that, they are as straightforward an example of the values of Trump-era conservatism as you could ask for. An entire political movement venerating an old man who believes whatever racist lies flash across his television screen. Wow. Well, mark this whole segment for the editor. We got some cleanup to do. All right. Well, at any rate, well put, as always, by Adam, and of course, ruining it with last minute inability to choke through the words. But well put, and I'm glad we could manage to find that article in its entirety to share with you. I mentioned that there's, I guess before we move on from this, a piece from Springfield's local paper, the Springfield News-Sun, with a definitive date after which they had become trusted. That is to say, the Springfield News-Sun, trusted since 1898. It's been in publication since 1854, but everybody hated it I don't know. I guess established in 1898. I love those sorts of taglines. But the reality of it is, of course, no laughing matter. Not that stops us, from experiencing joy in some way where possible. The name of the child killed is memorialized here in the headline. Aiden Clark. Aiden Clark's dad begs Springfield and politicians stop using son to hate Haitians. It's in headline language, so all of the connective tissue is missing here. But the boy was killed in a 2023 school bus crash caused by a Haitian immigrant. Father says we can't even protect his memory when he's gone. And there's a photo of him dabbing at his eyes here with a tissue, speaking in some public forum here. The author of the piece, Jessica Orozco, wrote on just the other day, September 10th, the father of the 11-year-old boy killed last year when a minivan driver struck his school bus, spoke at Tuesday's Springfield City Commission meeting, again pleading with the community to stop using his son's name as part of hateful statements toward Haitian immigrants. Nathan Clark, Aiden's father, stood next to his wife Danielle at a packed city commission meeting, urging people to cease using his son to further their political views. It's another Seth Rich situation, essentially. I wish that my son, listen to this, I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would say something so blunt, but if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone, Clark told the City Hall Forum. The last thing we need is for the worst day of our lives to be violently and consistently shoved in our faces. But even that's not good enough for them. They take it one step further. They make it seem that our wonderful Aiden appreciates your hate, that we should follow their hate. That's a really good point. Aiden was killed on the morning of August 22nd, 2023, when a 2010 Honda Odyssey, driven by Haitian immigrant Hermanio Joseph, 36, went left of center in the 4100 block of Troy Road, Ohio 41, it is helpfully noted here, at Lawrenceville and into the path of an oncoming school bus. The bus driver tried to avoid the Honda by driving onto the shoulder, but the bus still collided with the minivan. The bus and van went off the side of the road, with the bus rolling over. Armanio Joseph was sentenced to 9 to 13 and a half years in prison. You know, all of the things that needed to happen happened for the crash on first-degree felony involuntary manslaughter and fourth-degree vehicular homicide. That's actually a pretty stiff sentence for something like that, I would say. Joseph has since been used as a rallying cry for anti-immigrant rhetoric. Joseph had an Ohio ID card and testified during the trial that he was in Springfield on temporary protected status. That's a legal status, by the way. On Tuesday, Nathan Clark denounced multiple Republican politicians, including vice presidential candidate and his own U.S. Senator, J.D. Vance, former President Donald Trump, and U.S. Senate candidate Bernie Moreno for their statements that Clark said used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members, Clark said. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed, to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. Okay. Now, I don't know. I mean, you can't fault him because he's certainly under emotional distress here. But I would add, if he had that one to do over again, he might say, no, they can't vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants. This is terrible. They should stop. But, of course, his chief concern, and no one can blame him, would be the memory of his son. There are an estimated 12 to 15,000 Haitian immigrants living in Springfield now, according to data from the Clark County Combined Health District and other partners. Springfield Mayor Rob Rue said at a press conference earlier on Tuesday, Clark said Aiden was not murdered, but killed by accident. He said the community still deeply is affected by the accident. This tragedy is still all over this community, the state, and even the nation, but don't spin this towards hate, Clark said. In order to live like Aiden, you need to accept everyone, choose to shine, make the difference, lead the way, and be the inspiration. What many people in this community and state and nation are doing is the opposite of what we should be doing. Sure, we have our problems here in Springfield and in the U.S., but does Aiden Clark have anything to do with that? I would guess the answer there is no. The Clark family shared similar sentiments about Aiden being used for political gain at Joseph's sentencing hearing in May. Clark said that one of the worst feelings in the world was to not be able to protect his son. Even worse, we can't even protect his memory when he's gone. Well, a good point, and well worth knowing as part of the background of this story. So as I said, there's also background stories to the falsehoods being spread about what's going on in Aurora, Colorado. And I have two pieces about that one from Axios and one from NBC News. Axios, as you know, is going to be structured in a weird way that they report all these things, why it matters, the background, all of that stuff. Let me read the narrative version of it from NBC News. What led to rumors that Trump shared about Venezuelan gangs taking over a Colorado building? Social media posts falsely claiming the Tren de Aragua gang took over an apartment building. Well, those media posts went viral, and former President Donald Trump repeated the false claims in the debate. I saw it on television, or at least a screen that glows like a television. Right? Maybe it was my phone. Nicole Acevedo reporting here just yesterday for NBC News. Former President Donald Trump repeated again and again debunked rumors related to Venezuelan gangs in a Colorado town during Tuesday night's presidential debate. Social media posts falsely claiming a Venezuelan gang had taken over an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado. I guess because, I don't know, somehow I just saw that they were replaying New Jack City on one of the, the cable networks. And so for those people still watching linear television, maybe that was the inspiration of it. Anyway, these rumors have circulated widely in pro-Trump communities and have been boosted by right-wing pundits in recent weeks. Even after local officials publicly refuted that the Tren de Aragua, right? Tren de Aragua gang had taken over the building. Sensationalist claims vaguely tying the rumors to the growth of Colorado's migrant population continued going viral on social media. Trump amplified them further over the past week as he brought up the rumors several times in recent rallies and interviews, and then again in the debate. We have millions of people pouring into our country. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They're taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They are going in violently, Trump said on the debate stage in Philadelphia. They're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality. What does that even mean? And we have to get them out. The viral rumors used, quote, the most common forms of misinformation, unquote, tactics, such as reposting old videos without context, misrepresenting existing data, and Frankensteining together, that's an interesting way of putting it, Frankensteining together misleading pieces of evidence to fabricate a false narrative, according to the News Literacy Project, a nonprofit fact-checking organization that debunked the rumor. Roberta Braga, founder and executive director of the Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas, a nonprofit organization that studies the impact of misinformation on Latino communities, I'm glad to see that's being studied separately, told NBC News that the false claims related to the Tren de Aragua, or to the gang, are just the latest examples of rumors created to feed a broader narrative meant to demonize immigrants. We very often see these claims associated with migrants being criminals or gang members, claims that portray them as the source of increased crime and insecurity in the U.S. broadly, in a way that puts blame directly on them for what people frame as a decline of American society, Braga said. Residents at the Aurora apartments, many of them immigrants from Venezuela and other Latin American countries, have denied the false rumors of the gang takeover and said they increasingly feel unsafe after having unfairly been deemed criminals. Right now, I am scared because of what's been created, and all the xenophobia hate has increased toward us. Carlos, okay, let me work on this last name here, Ordoscoiti, maybe? Oh my goodness, that's a tough one. I've not seen that. It's not a frequently seen, frequently that I've seen. It's Ordos, O-R-D-O-S-G-O-I-T-T-I. I mean, maybe it's Italian originally, but okay. Ordoscoiti, maybe. A Venezuelan man, Carlos is, living in one of the Aurora buildings, and he told this to NBC News affiliate KUSA of Denver in Spanish, I'm really scared. So, the false claim of a takeover began, get this, ready? Began with the owner of 3 Aurora apartment complexes. Why would this happen with the owner? Well, he's an embattled, as they say, property manager who was facing charges in municipal court because of years of unresolved health and safety code violations. So his residents were bringing him to court for these unresolved problems, and he decided that, I guess the way he would dig out from underneath the court accusations would be to say, oh, I don't know, either it's somehow not my fault because I've lost control of the building because of Venezuelan gangs, or that all these people who are accusing me of this are in cahoots with Venezuelan gangs, so don't listen to them. It's basically an attempt to distract from his being, well, accused of being a slumlord, essentially, right? That's the way I'm reading it. The false claim of a takeover began with the owner of these 3 buildings, an embattled property manager who's facing charges in municipal court, right, because of all these unresolved health and safety code violations, rat and bug infestations, overflowing trash, sewage backups, water leaks, deteriorating infrastructure, all some of the violations documented since at least February 2021, city officials have said, but the property management company that owns the buildings blamed a Venezuelan gang for the rundown conditions. It's not us, it's the gang, you see. Over the summer, an attorney representing the company sent letters to local police and city and state officials claiming the gang had, quote, forcibly taken control, the Denver Gazette reported. The claims were echoed by city officials, mostly conservatives, without concrete evidence, KUSA reported. The allegation picked up steam during the last week of August after local media outlets, including KUSA, reported on a video obtained from a resident showing a group of men carrying guns in one of the buildings and seemingly trying to break an apartment door open. It certainly does look bad, but of course, remember, it's an open carry state, and it's fine for everybody to be carrying AR-15s anyway, so whatever. Aurora police haven't yet determined whether the men in the video belong to any Venezuelan gangs, KSUSA reported. Aurora police said they have been investigating the presence of Tren de Aragua in coordination with Denver police, but gang members are not taking over an Aurora apartment complex, police said. So, once again, Republicans get a chance to hate cops again for being on the wrong side. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I got just one more segment left. What else can I cram in here? I feel like I want to finish this up. I don't know. Sometimes we go in depth on these things. Sometimes not. But, I think I'm responsible for my own summary today anyway. So ordinarily I worry that I'm going to drive Scott up the wall by speaking for 2 hours and giving him 2 links to look at. But today I drive myself up that wall instead. But yes, where we left off was finding out that, look, the police in Aurora say there's no indication that anybody has taken over these apartment buildings, much less that they're Venezuelan gang members. There's certainly Venezuelan gang activity in the area, but there's gang activity every place. But, last week it was MS-13 is taking over everything. All right, well, we can't find any MS-13 taking over anything. Well, now a new one from Venezuela, Tren de Aragua, is taking over everything. Okay, except there's no actual evidence that they're taking over anything. And so, boo cops. Boycott the cops, along with Bud Light and Taylor Swift, all of a sudden. Well, anyway, gang members are not taking over an Aurora apartment complex, according to the police, adding that the gang's activity remains isolated, as they put it. Every time there's an instance of an isolated crime performed by a migrant in the U.S., it gets cherry-picked and then blown out of proportion to essentially castigate all migrants, Braga said. You know the play. Now, misinformation, of course, spreads despite being debunked. That's the name of the subtitle of the next section. Fragments of the video showing the armed men inside the Aurora apartment building were used in combination with clips from a 2-month-old motorcycle parade in Brazil to create an Instagram post falsely claiming that members of the Hells Angels, an outlaw motorcycle club, were on their way to Aurora. Why? To save the city after gangs from Venezuela took over the apartments. The Hells Angels Colorado chapter, by the way, released a statement denying the claims. It's amazing that they even have such a such a mechanism. But, no, we're not going to just suddenly become about being in the business of reestablishing law and order. We're an outlaw gang. If anything, we'll have a sit down with this other gang and try and carve up the territory. The idea that we're coming in to restore law and order sounds a little ridiculous. But, people have their weird fantasies about, I don't know what. Somehow, white motorcycle outlaw gangs are awesome and law-abiding and patriotic, because there are some motorcycle gangs that actually aren't about being outlaws, and they love riding around with American flags and maybe even supporting Trump. But the Hells Angels aren't going to be one of them. But there was a point at which Trump, was it Hells Angels? Maybe it even was, that he, brought some motorcycle gang guys up on stage and made it look like he was pals with them, and so therefore he was tough too, I guess. Anyway, Meta, Instagram's parent company, labeled the post as including false information after its fact-checking partners debunked the claims, but that didn't stop the false information from spreading, as new videos with the same claims but different outdated and out-of-context clips proliferated across social media platforms. Mert Bayar. That's the name of this person. Mert? I've not run into that one. Attention, we are out of Mert license plates. Okay. Excuse me, my son is also named Mert. Mert. All right. Mert Bayar, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make fun of your name. A postdoctoral scholar at the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, who's clearly doing great work and important work at that, and who researches rumors about immigrants and non-citizens, told NBC News that misinformation patterns seem to reflect, or this misinformation anyway, seem to reflect an online behavior commonly known among news brokering social media accounts, often hiding behind catchy usernames and cartoonish avatars. Such accounts curate and disseminate information about a crisis event and often fabricate inflammatory content to make it fit a specific agenda. Another anti-immigrant rumor that spread this week and was repeated by Trump on the stage on Tuesday night was, of course, the one we just did, the debunked claim about Haitian immigrants harming household pets. In a joint interview with KUSA, Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman, a Republican, and Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, not the one from Congress, Johnson, but Johnston, a Democrat, both in this joint interview said other long-standing criminal organizations in the area remain greater threats than this Venezuelan gang, but an environment of hysteria right now over this is complicating their ability to ensure Tren de Aragua doesn't gain a foothold in the area. Kaufman said. Kaufman even described an example in which some people conflated an impromptu meetup of Venezuelans awaiting the result of their homeland's presidential election with gang activity. Aurora police have arrested 10 people connected to Tren de Aragua, KUSA reported. Despite attempts to dispel myths and rumors about the Venezuelan gang's presence in Aurora, additional false narratives continued to emerge online, including posts on Twitter falsely claiming that Aurora police had issued a shelter-in-place order in response to Venezuelan gang violence, and that Venezuelan gangs started taking over apartments in Chicago after having gained control of one in Aurora. Both posts remain on Twitter without any kind of labeling, letting users know that they contain false information. The posts have gotten 26.3 million views and been reposted over 40,000 times. Twitter did not respond to any email requesting comment. Next up, making immigration a political flashpoint. You know that that's happening. As part of their political platform, Republicans are focusing on hardline immigration policies and stricter border security. They have often focused on narratives connecting immigration and crime. I think you know this part. We can probably skip right over that, although it's always worth reminding people of the specifics. But that actually would bring us then to the end of the article. And the real point of using this article was to bring up what appears to be the real origin story of this, that a landlord who's in trouble for with the municipal court for health and safety violations at his buildings is the one telling people, look over there, it's not my fault. The reason that we're being reported for these violations is I don't control this place. Venezuelan gangs do. Is there any more information in the Axios report of it? Aurora leaders backtrack on overstated claims of Venezuelan gang activity. I don't know whether at any point, that makes it sound like at some point the mayors of the nearby towns actually misstated things and said that there was more important and impactful gang activity, and then upon fact-checking it, have backtracked. Is that right? Both city leaders, that would be the mayors of Aurora and Aurora City Council. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think we found out that in the joint interview that was just cited between the Aurora mayor and the Denver mayor, the Aurora mayor was identified as a Republican, still saying, no, this isn't really what's happening here. But I guess originally, Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman and Aurora City Council member Danielle Jurinsky issued a joint statement on Wednesday downplaying this Venezuelan gang activity. Why does it matter? Both of these two, who have fueled much of the information on the issue, it says, both city leaders who have fueled much of that information are now backpedaling and calling for calm one day after unfounded claims about gang violence in Aurora took center stage at Tuesday's presidential debate. What are they saying? That the gang has not taken over the city. The overstated claims fueled by social media and through select news organizations are simply not true. But apparently, at some point, they hinted that they might be. Here's a reality check. For weeks, Jurinsky has been the chief driver, if you really want to know. That's what Axios has to say. Jurinsky. Who's Jurinsky? Once again, Aurora City Council member Danielle Jurinsky was the chief driver of claims that an Aurora apartment complex was, quote, taken over by Venezuelan gang members. Just days ago, she told Fox News that arguments against her allegations were a huge cover-up, adding, this isn't just an Aurora issue. Kaufman contributed to the confusion with contradictory statements on national TV. On the other side, it says here, in response to the joint statement, some of Colorado's top Democrats on Wednesday praised the city for clarifying. Thank you to the city of Aurora for setting the record straight, said U.S. Representative Jason Crow, who represents Aurora. These claims have led to a narrative that makes it harder for law enforcement to do their job. And remember, we're supposed to want that. And incited dangerous rhetoric against our immigrant community. His statement was reposted by Colorado Governor Jared Polis. The state of play, as they like to put it in Axios. Aurora police have linked 10 people to this gang and arrested 8 of those individuals between January and August. Their arrests spanned various crimes, including shootings and assaults. And many of those incidents happened at or near the Aurora apartment complexes that Jurinsky said had been taken over. In line with those arrests, we can now confirm the criminal activity, including TDA, Tren de Aragua, issues had significantly affected those properties, but I guess they think it's under control. So I don't know. It sounds like the mayor doesn't have the cleanest hands there, but that perhaps the chief driver is the city council member. And now that it's in the spotlight and people are saying, I heard it mentioned in the debate, let's drill down. Guess what? Backtracking and clarifying is what is the order of the day now. Okay. Well, that's typical, I guess. By the way, if you haven't heard this rumor, just to keep you up to speed on all the rumors, things that might blow up over the weekend, as it turns out, Republicans are desperate to find some other explanation for why Trump sucked in the debate. And that can't obviously be the answer. He sucked, or even that Laura Loomer effed him up, or anything like that, because he's way too smart to have been tripped up by Laura Loomer. It must have been something else. And the fault must be Kamala Harris's. Naomi Wolf, one of the idiots supreme, still wandering the wild, is out there spreading this rumor on Twitter that Kamala Harris was aided in her trouncing of Trump by the use of, not illegal per se, but again, a device that was against the rules. They were not supposed to have any notes or anything like that. any props or notes or, this was all supposed to be off-the-cuff, impromptu debate, even though many of the pieces of it were rehearsed. And some of them were rehearsed with Laura Loomer, which was Trump's problem. But the reason Kamala Harris was so competent was that she was getting advice through sophisticated, hidden in-ear devices, just telling her what to say. And they were disguised as, you'll never guess what, her regular earrings. Right, dramatic music. I guess Naomi Wolf repeating and then commenting on the comment of someone known as, identified on screen as First Principles Mike, who tweets as Old Wisdom 44. I don't know if there's any wisdom at all involved in this, but I guess people were saying, conservatives were saying they were surprised by the competency of Kamala Harris's presentation in the debate, because of course she's stupid and pretending to be smart and is totally incompetent, just like Biden, and you'll see in the debate she'll be horrific. But actually she's a practiced and polished politician and a practiced and polished courtroom prosecutor. The kind of people who, marshal their evidence, study their facts, and present a case, and can think on their feet and respond to counter accusations, and who just are naturally or after years of practice good at this. But no, that can't possibly be it. Mike here has to say absolutely 100% believable that she wore. They have, I guess, identified what they say is the brand of the non-existent, probably a made-up product that she used. Absolutely 100% believable that she wore these earbuds. Her performance, 180 degrees out of phase with any other debate showing that she's ever had, proves that some type of assistance was rendered. And they're not 180 degrees out of phase with other debate. It's nonsense to say so, but Naomi Wolf loves nonsense. Her performance, she says, was 100% different from any appearance she's ever made. Not possible, in my opinion, for a person so inept to change so much overnight. Is it a crime to use a technology to cheat on a presidential debate? If so, there should be discovery, including asking Nova. I don't even know who that is. Oh, there might be the manufacturer of the fake things that probably don't exist. Nova for their order records. Did the White House or Vice President Harris order these earrings/earbuds? I am serious. You are not serious. I'm not a serious person, Naomi. That's pretty ridiculous. I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that in right-wing circles they're saying such things in case you run into it and somebody says, the Haitian immigrants, they kill the cats and they make earbuds out of them and they give them to Kamala Harris so she can cheat in the debate. You'll know where you'll know that nonsense exists. You won't know where it came from. It just came from their fever dreams. Okay, let's see. There's so much more. And so many different directions we could take. Shall I add this one to the plot? There's a couple of different references here. I'm evaluating them on the fly. This would be a long read, and we're running out of time for this long read, so we might not make it through. But Greg Sargent hasn't had a chance to be quoted this week, and he's put together a written piece for us that he, too, pivoting more towards podcasts these days. So I appreciate it when he puts things down in writing. But maybe he's been doing so much on his podcast that he wants to catch us all up on that he wrote this long piece here. Maybe a good way to wind up for Friday, though. Trump's slow burn authoritarianism. Now, I know we all know and understand it. And maybe it won't be all that revealing, but I think it's always been good for us in the past to let Greg Sargent summarize his thoughts for us on any subject that we're worried about. You've read about the scary horrors of a Trump second term, but a legal war of attrition that harasses MAGA's enemies and transforms government info into propaganda could prove more insidious and harder to mobilize against. This makes an excellent point. I'm glad I could get it out, before the show ends, because it's right up here in the subtitle. But yes, I think it doesn't take a great deal of imagination to understand the very many things that could go badly for lots of us in a second Trump administration, whether he's elected to that term or not. But yeah, good point here. Essentially, even if he, doesn't just take over as dictator, he could essentially make life miserable for anybody he felt like targeting. If he turns loose federal or supportive state organizations to, go about harassing his political enemies, charging with them with made up crimes or the necessity for investigation, just as Ken Paxton is doing now for people who dare to register people to vote, or as Ron DeSantis is doing now in interrogating people in their homes to see whether or not they really, really, really signed a petition, as many hundreds of thousands of millions of people did around the country, to put an abortion related question on the ballot in that state. And that this excellent point here too, transforming government information into propaganda, right? Well, I guess I better get to it. If he doesn't, make the point high up enough in the story, we can make our own stab at what's going on here. But this is the way Greg has put it. If Donald Trump wins in November and launches a full-blown authoritarian presidency next year, as he has promised to do in his own words, what exactly would that national nightmare look like? One set of oft-floated worst-case scenarios looks something like this. Trump orders his pliant pick for attorney general to prosecute Liz Cheney and other high-profile critics and frog march them before the cameras. Trump invokes the Insurrection Act to dispatch the military into cities to crush mass protests, or rather, you could just as easily order them into the cities to crush imaginary protests as well, or to declare small protests that may or may not be anything about anything he's done, and declare them to be insurrections and round everybody up. Right? It could just as easily happen because people have assembled to protest over the war in Gaza. Well, that's insurrection. Let's just arrest all of them. I need some arrests. Let's do some stuff. Right? Trump unshackles deportation forces to drag millions of undocumented immigrants from their homes and workplaces. Trump purges our nation's intelligence services, stocks them with loyal foot soldiers, and unleashes them as domestic spying forces to gather information on designated enemies of the MAGA movement. It would be folly to dismiss these possibilities, since Trump has repeatedly threatened to carry out something resembling every one of those things. He has vowed to prosecute his political opponents without cause. Just vowed to shut down ABC News, right, for having fact-checked him. He has loudly called for the indictment of members of the congressional committee that investigated his January 6th insurrection attempt. He has mused aloud that he might send the military into Democratic-run cities. Trump and his advisors have floated plans for mass migrant removals facilitated by huge detention complexes, and even potentially carried out by the military. Trump has repeatedly pledged to purge the supposedly corrupt deep state, his shorthand for federal law enforcement and intelligence services, and has openly suggested that he would use state power to persecute domestic enemies that he describes as vermin. Yet, as horrifying as all of that is, another less garish scenario also potentially looms. This is the real point, and in some respects it might be more plausible one. A second Trump presidency could unleash a kind of lower profile, slow burn authoritarianism, something that unfolds much more quietly and largely behind the scenes. It's in its targeting of internal enemies and its efforts to carry out revolutionary changes via far-right governance. It could end up being much less dramatic, visible, or splashy, but at the same time extremely insidious, difficult to track, and very challenging to mobilize against. The potential victims of such behind-the-scenes actions grasp this possibility perfectly well. While we constantly hear about high-profile preparations by Democratic lawmakers, pro-democracy advocates, and other interested stakeholders against the most nightmarish authoritarian scenarios underway, Another, more subterranean layer of preparations is quietly unfolding among a different class of targets. These are Trump critics who have already hired lawyers who are advising them to gird for low-grade bureaucratic bullying. They are advocates anticipating years of legal warfare against vulnerable populations like transgender Americans. They are state-level officials scouring statutes to prepare for legal tussles over who controls the National Guard. They are career government officials bracing for the corruption of official information to serve the autocrat-in-chief's whims and propagandistic needs, and the underhanded subversion of rulemaking processes to deliver spoils to his cronies. In interviews, what people in these situations say they anticipate is a type of legal and bureaucratic uncertainty that isn't anything like watching troops invade cities, but nonetheless could prove highly unpredictable and deeply unsettlingly precarious. We are organizing to win this election, but if, God forbid, an authoritarian MAGA clampdown comes, however it happens, it may not be tanks in the streets and midnight disappearances. Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland told me it may be more akin to a corrosive long-term campaign of constant official and vigilante harassment against perceived political adversaries of the President King. Again and again, Trump and his allies have declared right in the open that a second Trump presidency would unleash law enforcement to carry out mass persecution of MAGA's designated enemies. We will go out and find the conspirators, right? Not just in government, but in the media. Kash Patel, a high-level national security official during Trump's first term, who is expected to play a senior role in a second one, enthused last December. We're going to come after you. Longtime Trump loyalist Steve Bannon has similarly suggested that in Trump's first couple of months, prosecutions will get rolling. People credibly being floated for high-level Justice Department positions, such as right-wing lawyer Mike Davis, are openly threatening such campaigns. Longtime Trump advisor Stephen Miller has called for Trump-friendly U.S. attorneys to prepare in advance to prosecute Democrats based on nothing more than the big lie that current prosecutions of Trump are illegitimate. These exchanges were quietly and widely noted by a very particular class of people, high-profile Trump critics now bracing to be victimized. Tellingly, however, what these people are actually envisioning is not quite what all these Trump allies are threatening. While they do believe Trump and his allies will attempt splashy prosecutions, they expect something more like sustained legal and bureaucratic harassment. Let's get to it, please. Mark Zaid, a veteran lawyer in Washington who represents federal employees and intelligence officials, said he now has at least a dozen clients who are actively planning for years of exactly that. Exactly what? Say it. He has advised them to expect Justice Department investigations that might not lead to prosecutions, but nonetheless would drain them of resources. IRS investigations into their taxes and business ventures. Revoked passports, or threats to cancel security clearances, all designed to get potential critics to self-silence. A second Trump administration will not hesitate to exercise every executive branch weapon it can against those it considers enemies, real or otherwise, Zaid told me. We expect a very targeted approach designed to drain the financial resources of political adversaries. Designed to leave them neutralized and isolated. What might such an effort look like? After talking to a number of people preparing for such eventualities, I can report that they're largely bracing for something like this. In early 2025, as emboldened President Trump orders his Attorney General to drop ongoing federal prosecutions of him over his insurrection and theft of state secrets, as the public debate over this unfolds on the airwaves, Trump gets particularly irritated by commentary from, say, a longtime critic who is now castigating his latest moves. Perhaps that person is commentator like George Conway, or someone who investigated Trump during his presidency like Andrew Weissman. Trump curses uncontrollably about that person in a private conversation with his attorney general, and offhandedly mentions hearing that he or she is up to unsavory activities related to his or her business or legal practice. But unlike in the nightmare scenarios we've heard, this never results in real prosecutions. Instead, word of Trump's rage filters down the chain of command in the Justice Department until it lands in the lap of an FBI agent or U.S. attorney who's eager to stand out to Trump and his top advisors. An investigation ensues. investigators start calling that person's associates and dig through his or her records. Nothing more materializes, but it puts the target through months or years of deeply unsettling and expensive precarity. That's a completely plausible scenario. Peter Keisler, who held high-level positions in the Justice Department during the George W. Bush administration, told me. He said Trump would likely choose his attorney general precisely because he'd willingly transmit Trump's whims to eager subordinates. Alternatively, Keisler said, Trump's White House chief of staff could well be a loyalist willing to ring up a Trumpy U.S. attorney and make a suggestion or two about someone who has displeased Trump. Perhaps this will strike readers as overly speculative, but it shouldn't. Trump has already tried to order prosecutions of foes during his first term, and if anything, the expectation of harassing investigations, one that falls short of actual prosecutions, is a benign way to interpret the second term intentions that Trump and his allies have openly articulated. Preparations for this are grounded in a basic recognition about the justice system. That is, Trump and his allies the ones that Trump and his allies have openly articulated. I'm way behind. I apologize to Justice for taking so long and reading into this, but how about a little more? Preparations for this are grounded in a basic recognition about the justice system. Trump and his allies probably won't be able to launch baseless prosecutions on a mere Trumpian whim. That would require the cooperation of grand juries and courts. But they probably can create lots of hardship just short of that. The first steps of any investigation are very easy to initiate, much easier than prosecutions are, Keisler said. Preliminary investigations face far fewer checks or interventions by independent actors in the system like judges, and they can do a lot to ruin people's lives. Either way, the targets would be in hell. The question is just which circle of hell they'd be in. Along those lines, Zaid's been advising clients who are high-profile critics of Trump to prepare for those IRS audits, for things directed at their personal finances or organizations that they work for, such as nonprofits or political action committees, and efforts to target such groups' tax-exempt status. Intriguingly, in prepping clients for the threat of revoked passports, Zaid has been examining the long-forgotten case of a CIA officer named Philip Agee, who soured on CIA methods and was accused of working for rival intelligence agencies. He had his passport revoked on national security grounds by the State Department under Ronald Reagan.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Walton.
Just a reminder what the outcome was there. Agee fought it all the way to the Supreme Court, but lost. So that's a potential model for the present, says Zaid. Anyway, you get the idea. You should read this thing over the weekend yourself. I'll give you a link to it. Now time to stay tuned for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next, right here. We'll see you next week.